Dr. Perera, Mr. Anandasangaree, thank you so much for joining us on Connections. I'd first like to start off by asking you what your initial response is to the report, the LLRC report, considering the fact that there was so much concern and criticism over the proceedings and as well as the composition of the commission.
My own feeling is that the LLRC did a very good job in terms of looking at the lessons learnt from the conflict, from the 30-year conflict, and in looking at the issues of governance and the need for a political solution. I think they were very courageous because what they have stated in terms of good governance and a political solution is not what is currently prevalent in our country. We have our government, for instance, has been taking the position that peace has come, and with the dawning of peace, there is only the need now for economic development, but not so much for political reform. Whereas the LLRC says, no, we have to look at the roots of the conflict. The roots of the conflict have still not been addressed and have to be addressed, and they suggest many ways in which those roots can be addressed. The LLRC has been faulted for its investigation into the issue of accountability. What happened during the last phase of the war? Were there human rights violations? Were there war crimes? And on that issue, the LLRC has been found fault with by the international human rights organizations in particular, and I'm sure by sections of the Tamil polity also. But here again, we have to realize the problem that the LLRC was faced with, because it is a body constituted by Sri Lankan people and appointed by the government.
Mr. Anandasangaree, do you think it has responded particularly to the expectations of the people when they came before the commission to...
While fully endorsing some of the matters mentioned by my good friend, with all respect to the commissioners, my frank opinion is they have failed their mission. The people's expectation was not met. Perhaps they were right, because they must have kept within the mandate they had, you see, within the, so, because I am sure, if my recollection is correct, I am one of those who gave evidence before the commission. The matters raised by me at that time and the questions they put to me were entirely different. Nothing to do with this UN report. So I think they had done their duty as entrusted to them by the President at that time. But this discussing or discussing the matter or analyzing the matters that came up after the agreement was, after the UN report was submitted, must have confused them, must have confused the commissioners. They didn't know what to do or what matter should be given priority. As I say, at the evidence I gave, I insisted that they should be given compensation. Yeah, most people don't know outside the country or even within the country. Most people didn't know the real situation that was prevailing after the war ended. The country, 2 districts are completely evacuated, not a single person left. Unless someone was hiding, you see, that was utterly impossible. 2 districts in full means, it's a part of the peninsula, part of the Jehan northern province, and 3 or 4 other districts also, partly they were moved out. So if you just imagine how Colombo will look like if all the people in Colombo are asked to move out, you see, it's terrible. So these are things, you see, that cannot be compensated with money alone. Goodwill is necessary first. At that time, if the government had been a little careful, most of the things would have been said. The people were not given a chance to go back to their homes. The government should have gone out of the way. Whatever happens, whatever loss the army or navy suffer, the first priority of the government should have been to save the people.
Okay. The report does, does say that investigation should be carried out into the killings of Tamil civilians. How should these investigations take place if it does take place?
The government should appoint inquiries, independent inquiries into those issues. So therefore, what we need to now try and see is that this follow-up does happen, and that that the LLRC report doesn't simply remain a report with recommendations in it, but actually that these inquiries do take place and compensation is paid and the whereabouts of missing people is ascertained. But the Commission's position is that they were not equipped to do this. They did not have the institutional machinery to do it. It would have taken far too long, because there are hundreds, thousands of cases that came up before them, that if they tried to investigate them, it just take far too much time. They were not equipped for it. This has to be done by some other process, and they are recommending certain steps to be taken.
Okay. So, considering our history with dealing with such commissions and commissions giving recommendations and most of it being ignored in the past, how do you expect this to happen? Do you think that such an investigation would take place following this?
Even now, it's not too late for the government to do that. There are a lot of resentment among the people now. They are not at all satisfied. First about now, if you take the matter of houses, the government had a moral duty to build up houses for all the people who lost their houses. But here the houses that were in existence, occupied by several thousand families, completely destroyed. The house that was occupied, no roof, no windows, no shutter, nothing is left. No well is properly kept. Actually, you can't repair that house, you have to rebuild it. So the government should not hand over the responsibility of the government for the war with the LTT. I am not defending the LTT. I am not holding a brief to the LTT nor a brief to the government. All these houses were destroyed because of the war.
There's also been some criticism that the report is too vague. For instance, when talking about the devolution of power, they use the term people-centric that could be subject to interpretation. Do you also feel that the report is too vague, and do you think that will pose a problem when implementation comes in?
Well, I think the first thing the government should do, and what civil society, the Tamil people, polity and the international community should try and persuade the government to do, is to appoint some sort of follow-up mechanism immediately to see that these recommendations are put into practice. We are happy that unlike past practice with with previous governments and especially this government, that this report was not suppressed entirely, or the commission was not wound up 3/4 of the way, which has happened in the past. But here the report has come out, been publicized, gone to the international community also, but now we need to ensure that the recommendations are immediately implemented. So for that, there should be some follow-up mechanism. In some countries they appoint an ombudsman, some countries they appoint a task force, and the members of the task force are given special powers and privileges so that they are taken very seriously. That is what we should be urging on the government. As regards the recommendations of the commission, yes, they have made general statements, especially about a political solution, but they do mention the need for devolution of power and the provincial council system. They talk about power sharing at the center. They also talk about grassroots level devolution. So it's devolution at power sharing at 3 levels, but they don't specify. That is, they have left it for others to do. But they have set a good framework, at least where governance and a political solution are concerned, and human rights and freedoms for the people, such as the Freedom of Information Act. Those are very positive things.
Mr. Anandasangaree, with regard to the devolution of power and a political reform for the grievances of the conflict, in addressing those grievances, what is your response to what the recommendations the Commission has made?
I think we can't expect much from the Commission as far as the devolution of power is concerned. You don't need a commission to recommend. The President himself knows it. I think he is one of the most senior members in a politician living in this country today. He entered Parliament in 1970. He knew from that day up to now. He entered in Parliament in 1970. I also entered in 70. Well, there are 3 or 4 people now who know everything that happened during this period. They know what the people want. They, without certain accommodating to certain demands of the TNA, no solution can be found, no peace can be found. It is foolish not to boast about that there is peace in the country. There is no peace. Actually, the war was in the north and east. The people in the rest of the country were subjected to fear and terror, I admit. But as far as the loss and various other problems, they were all relating to the north and east. The north and east should have been taken as a separate unit, north and east should be as a separate unit for whether it is for development or for rehabilitation or reconstruction, for all that. So there must be specific commissions for separate to look into the general needs of the people. There should be, need not be a commission, you see, at least a committee to go into that. Then children, rehabilitation. I put a question to the commissioner, chief of the commissioner, sir, would you like to have your son trained as a carpenter, I asked. So he rolled his draft and said, why do you want to know that? I said, leave it to the people to decide. The government is boasting 440,000, all the LTT chaps have been rehabilitated. How? Who are the LTT 10,000 chaps? Innocent fellows, you see, who were chased after and brought into by force. I suggested to the commission, please recommend that these people should be inquired, they must be examined by 3 people, a police officer, retired judge or somebody, you see, and recommend them to be handed over to the parents with strict condition that they should look after them, keep them in the proper way, have them properly educated, and say, if necessary, make regular visit to the police station to sign. Nothing has done. We are boasting a rehabilitation. I scorn that. It is not I never wanted my son to be a carpenter or a tailor or a barber. Even people of that caliber want their children to be educated as doctors, engineers. Some people even want their sons to be MPs. That opportunity was never given. No? And no country in the world that gave us assistance never looked that side of it. So, more and more commissions will help. The present commission was not empowered to deal with everything that was lacking, everything that should have been encouraged into. So, I think the present should seriously consider dealing with each subject by a group of people who are devoted, gentlemanly, unbiased. Can you imagine, can you have a minister, a biased minister who talks of building houses in the south and nothing in the north? That type of problems you see are there.